Good luck.
I see we have some very punctual participants, but we're going to give everybody about a minute here to join on. Welcome to those of you who have entered the room. Okay, I think we will get started as more people trickle in. Welcome, everyone. My name is Alexandra Mondolek, and I was a freelance reporter and now am a senior editorial associate for Business of Fashion based in New York. And I am so excited to be moderating today's panel discussion, Creating Unique Brand and Customer Experiences. I'm taking a look at how brands are continuously creating value to not just capture new customers, but to retain loyal fans. I am pleased to introduce our panelists. We have Sylvia Galfo, who is the Global Brand President at Revlon, Kim Burrs, who is an industry expert as well as president at New Theory Ventures, Michelle Miller, who is the Vice President of Marketing at COSIS, and me. So welcome, everyone. Happy to have you here.
We're so excited to be here.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. So I guess, before we dive into some of the questions that we'd prepared, what about this panel topic stands out to you, creating unique brand and customer experiences in the year 2020?
I'm gonna go first. I guess it's definitely a topic that is on point on what all journals that went out this year. So I think that it's a little bit of a reset for everyone to rethink how we while there's a sea of non-personal communication or contact through the internet on the social channels, I think that probably there will be a way we have to rethink how we go back into melting a bit more like the personal touch to this, world of a little bit unpersonal, connection. So I think that's the
I'm not sure if Sylvia cut out here. I want to remind everybody, sorry, go ahead, Kim.
I was just going to jump in and say, I think that, what this year has done in some ways is accelerated a lot of the trends that we were seeing in 2019, whether it is more social selling or, more people sort of moving indoors and creating smaller communities and things like that. But what I think, we are still, I think we've scrambled over the past couple of months to really figure out how to just do business in these times. And now the shift is really on how do we now actually really create more meaningful brand experiences. And I think we've seen some incredible pivots by brands to create that consumer engagement, even if it isn't face-to-face, that is still meaningful, whether it's, Madison Reed doing personal hair consultations, or even, I think it was Casper that now took all their store staff and put them into the customer service center to answer calls and things like that, to give that one-on-one. That we're starting to figure it out, but we still have a lot of runway to figure out how to make those experiences, I think, safe and right for what the consumer is looking for.
Yeah, and then to jump off that, I think we have seen so much of a sense of sameness in beauty in the last few years. So with this year, it's really an opportunity to reinvent, how we market beauty. It was getting very old and tired, and I think as consumers were bored, and people are seeing it in a new way. So it's time for brands to step up.
Definitely. What great opening remarks. Thank you all. And I want to remind our viewers as well that if you'd like to participate by asking a question, feel free to do so by inputting it in the Q&A section in Zoom, and we will definitely get to them by the end of the call. But if you have something pressing throughout, please don't hesitate to ask. So we can jump right in by getting to how to reach customers with this massive disruption in offline activity, plus reduced footfall in shopping centers. So some brands, particularly in the fashion and apparel space like Nike, have seen that footfall has reduced, but they've managed to make up those losses in e-com. Has it been the same for you, Michelle and Sylvia, in the beauty space for Revlon and for Kosas?
Michelle, you want to go?
Yeah, sure. You know, the digital first strategies that we were seeing in the last decade are really paying off now in a post-COVID world. At Kosas, we've leveled up on our website, our paid strategy, and on all of our social channels. I think brands that are nimble and are winning because speed and being agile really helps in this environment of rapid evolution. We're also really hyper on being fluid and moving with our customer in these times. We know everyone is doubling down and online, but it's important to think about how the consumer is consuming content in the moment. You know, it was IG Lives and Zooms earlier this year, and it's not that anymore.
I think to build on that, I think obviously it's the same thing. We've seen an acceleration of e-commerce across the board for us. Obviously investing more in that vein, whether it's Amazon or our retail partners. The consumer is connecting with content and in this journey. So I think obviously on the social channels we've seen acceleration on IG stories, live streaming, and obviously TikTok has, you know, blown it up, you know, in the last couple of 6 months. Obviously CRM is.
I was going to jump in now. Oh, sorry.
Am I jumping out?
Yes.
A little bit.
Okay, so I don't know. Maybe I'm gonna. Yeah. Can you hear me now? Sorry, guys. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I think it's really the digital shift. I mean, as you said, Kim, it's not. We were just playing with, and now making really like a real strategy and acceleration with investments behind those different touch points.
Mm-hmm. One thing I would add on that, I mean, I think the digital shift for sure, I completely agree with everything you said. And the thing I would add on to that is the shift in communication and content. And, you know, to Michelle's point about being able to pivot quickly, the brands that have quickly modified and adapted their messaging and how they are interacting with the consumer, I think are the ones that are really, really winning. And so that can be maybe through brand collaborations. And so like Aquis did a giveaway with Madison Reed, and I mean, just blew up in terms of how many people they were reaching. But I also think brands like not in beauty, it's been really interesting. I read a couple of articles on online dating, and because I was so surprised about how Match just quickly came out with ads about how you can date on Zoom. And they almost normalized new dating behavior, where I think the other dating sites, I think, kept up with, you know, in-app video chats and things like that. Match actually changed their entire ad strategy and communication strategy to normalize the new behavior. And so for me, watching brands that have not just, you know, shifted dollars from retail to from brick and mortar to D2C, there's also this brand piece of creating relevant messaging for the consumer that I think is going to be critical as we move forward.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Great points. And all of you mentioned content, which I think is super interesting, but I'd love to dig into the nuts and bolts of what that content looks like, what it feels like to the consumer. And before the webinar began, you know, Michelle had noted that everybody was excited to do Zooms and happy hour Zooms and Instagram Lives. And now there seems to be quite a bit of fatigue there. So how have the brands that you all work for pivoted to meet consumers where they are mentally and physically?
So for example, on Revlon, what we did several the lockdown, and you can imagine for cosmetics being locked down at home, you know, the consumption obviously was, you know, probably going way down. So I think one thing which is important, I think what you mentioned is contextual relevant content, right? Because at the end of the day, you can push as much work if you want, but if it doesn't really, if you're not feeling about wearing makeup because you're locked in your home and stressed out about your health, obviously it doesn't make any sense. So one thing we did, we came up with a campaign at the very beginning of COVID with what we called But It Helps. And basically the idea was to say, you don't have to wear makeup when you're locked down, but it helps. It helps to boost way. That's this idea saying we cannot continue pushing just the lipstick. And now how you talk about
I mean, maybe I'll jump in here. I mean, I think the other thing about content, I mean, just like brass tacks in content, some things that I think are really important is the shift to short-lived content. And again, I think this trend was happening coming into this year, but the less curated content is what seems to be really, really resonating. So, you know, people, I mean, we were all tired of perfect brunch photos before this, but now we can't even go to brunch. So, but that you know, less curated, a little bit messier, not, you know, perfect flat lays. And what I've been seeing that's really resonating are things that are entertaining, super educational, but educational from people that have credible expertise in what they're talking about. And the other thing that I think is really winning is less transactional messaging and content. So, you know, not this sort of always like seizing the commercial opportunities. Early on, I was really surprised at how many people were going into hand sanitizers, you know, that just didn't have any business being in hand sanitizers. And it was just so off the mark, I think, in terms of where the consumer mindset was. Like, this isn't a commercial opportunity. Like, this is a real serious thing that we're living with. And so, to me, the people, again, that have stayed authentic, telling true stories, less curated, and not focusing on selling all the time are what is really cutting through.
Yeah, we saw this also. Sorry, go ahead, Nisha.
Michelle, how is COSIS thinking about TikTok?
You know, what I was going to jump off what Kim said, I think leads into this, is that the most effective content right now is content that you're fully engaged with. And TikTok is a really great example of this. It's not like Instagram where you can half-heartedly scroll while you're on the phone or watching TV. It commands your full attention, and that's the kind of content that converts at the end of the day. So from that perspective, we think of TikTok as relatable, where Instagram is aspirational. And I think that content is really resonating today. So that's our perspective there. We launched on TikTok this year. It's a platform that we're learning. And then we're also engaging with people on that platform.
I am super curious about how all of you are thinking about Pinterest right now. Today, they announced that they are launching what they call story pins, which looks to me sort of like a hybrid Instagram story, TikTok user interface, and they're opening it up to influencers. So I'm curious, A, how you're thinking about how your brands fit in on Pinterest, and more broadly, what your influencer strategy looks like now for the rest of the year, and how it's changed since the beginning of the pandemic.
So for the Pinterest, you know, that's something that we are definitely going to explore. I think different platforms that we're especially focused right now on are TikTok and YouTube and Instagram. Our influencer strategy, you know, we get asked this question a lot. Influencers are people, and like people, they're relationships that you have to nurture. This is a time right now where, like brands, they're also very much being held accountable. So we're being very intentional with who we partner with and making sure it comes from an authentic place.
I'm really excited about the Pinterest changes. I think that you know, obviously haven't explored it a lot, but I think there's a lot of opportunity in terms of how do you supplement brick and mortar exploration and learning and education more effectively. And, you know, for people that are looking for deeper dives, or I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity. We know historically Pinterest has converted people very successfully. There's just, you know, there weren't enough people on it. And so I think if they can really, you know, take this, get brands engaged and get the community engaged, I think there could be a massive opportunity here for brands.
Mm-hmm. Kim, I think you bring up a really interesting point, which is this idea specifically to the beauty space here about replicating that brick and mortar experience. And Erin Batista, I see one of our audience members, inputted a question here that I'm hoping one of you can answer. He says, wondering how the beauty space thinks about retail stores and activations going forward, more to in-home events or family and friend pod events. Beauty and touch and intimacy seem inseparable even with digital success.
I know Erin and love Erin, so thanks, Erin. I've spent a lot of time thinking about this. You know, Erin and I worked at Body Shop together, and we had the Body Shop at home, which sounds so antiquated now, you know, to have a party in your house selling makeup. But in fact, you know, I mean, I've been having happy hours with my neighbors every week in the street, and it feels like a 1950s street party, you know, but it's just a way to have some face-to-face human interaction. And so I think that, I don't think we figured it out, but I do think that there is this, we've sort of wiped the slate clean and we're rebuilding. And so for me, first of all, brick and mortar, I think, is going to change dramatically, I think, in terms of how people are viewing it, because people were already using .com as the gateway to shopping. But I think brick and mortar is going to go through a pretty big transformation. And then I love the idea of taking smaller groups and bringing them together safely, whether it's in store or outside of store, to sort of recreate those experiences.
Yes, I agree with what we've been trying to do, and actually doing something next month on hair color, is that we are doing a small event in one of the hair salons of one of our spokesperson, and trying to teach people how to apply the hair color in a very, very small setting, but then obviously everybody can participate through the live streaming. So I think it's a way to, in a way, connect the digital with like real lives, but making other people also participate, even if they cannot be there, but still having something which is like gathering people in one spot without obviously taking any risk on safety.
Mm-hmm. Sylvia, from any of the online events that Revlon has produced since March, have there been any surprising advantages to any of those online or non-traditional events?
Yeah, first of all, anybody can participate, right, at a global level. So I think that it's not like waitlist or, you know, so I think that definitely we've seen that you engage in a more interesting way with your consumers, and anybody can participate, so you don't exclude them. And I think that you can really, and you get actually instant feedback in a way, because you see how people engage and connect with you on that. And then I think that also, I think that you also then obviously can connect afterwards with that, you know. So I think that once people come and connect with you, you share, and they can also interact by asking questions. So I think that we've done some examples on, we did some live streaming on with KDJ News, one of our always on influencers, makeup artists, who teach people and people makeup, and then someone would be chosen as a younger artist to be part of it. So I think that you share real moments that are very authentic without being like top down of a big brand that only has celebrity, you know, a celebrity ambassador. So I think that breaking it down, I think, was important. But then on the other side, when you take, for example, Ashley Graham, who is obviously one of our biggest celebrities, but she's very approachable. So we did a prom activation earlier in the summer. And so the whole approach was to say, how do we engage younger generations to participate, because they couldn't have their regular prom, right? So we did this prom activation, and we had Sophia Carson and Ashley participating. And so Ashley, for example, she did like a live tutorial with one of these audience members, like a girl who was just, you know, following us on this event. And I think it was very touching, because it was like she was really teaching this young girl how to do her makeup for prom, and then everybody could participate and learn from that. So I think that you see that there's no more like layers, or, you know, everybody kind of, it's the same level. And I think this makes the whole experience also more authentic. And I think what Kim said before, the authenticity is very important, and being also a bit more raw and less polished, you know. So so I think that you see that there's a clear difference in engagement with the brand. It doesn't mean in the future we should not do again bigger events or bigger gatherings, but I think that it makes us think differently. That before it was like a taboo, saying, oh, like doing digitally is like too unpersonal. But I think at the end of the day, you exactly get the opposite, you know, and then you can connect with those people over CRM to build a relationship. I mean, there's many opportunities obviously to continue this longer term relationship, and not just like doing a one-off.
Yeah, and I think overall, what we've learned is online events are really cost effective and very efficient. but in a sense, they're actually a lot more difficult to think up because we've never had to do them before. And you really, as a team, have to put your heads together to create something virtually. Yeah, we did a virtual workout back in March, and really had to figure out the dynamics of a Zoom workout event. It didn't, you learn that you need good Wi-Fi, you need potentially a presentation. So really we're thinking of what's the next virtual experience. I think what we saw also with the Rare Beauty launch, we got to see Selena Gomez doing Zoom calls with everybody, whereas, pre-COVID, that wouldn't have been the case. So it really did get to level out some things, and she got to spread herself and get a lot more attention.
Mm-hmm.
We do take a lot of time.
Yeah. Have you planned any, Kim, or worked on any live events?
I have, and I think, when you take a step back though, and Michelle, I know Michelle so well, and she does this so well, is that it's not just about the event though, it's about how are you interacting with that person before the event, during the event, and then after the event. And so it's actually the same process, it's just new ideas. And I've seen hit and miss with events, and you can see that they haven't thought through all of the logistics, like you've said, or, how are you engaging with them leading up to it? So that would be like standing in line in a typical event, but now it's via email and DMs and, and so on. And so I think you've got to take a step back and take the same process, but apply it to new thinking.
Mm-hmm. Sarah is one of our audience members, and she asked, have any of the panelists built a virtual environment for an event? So, to further that question, thank you for asking, Sarah. I'm curious how all of you are thinking about where your brand is best served on what platforms, or whether it's from YouTube to Instagram to Zoom to, another third party that's hosting or producing a virtual event or webinar.
I think Fenty has done one recently, in terms of the virtual event. And, I thought it was really exciting. She was there, so you got access to her. She had incredible guests, surprise guests. But I haven't seen a lot, I don't know, Michelle or Sylvia, if you've seen a lot of those being built.
No, I think we've been doing like smaller, and then obviously went through Instagram Live, and trying to stay on those platforms so we have the highest obviously engagement and have our biggest followers. But and as we are planning obviously for bigger events later in the fall, we have to think it through. We honestly have to see which is the best way to connect, because I think that intuitively I would say that Zoom is like a little bit professional, it's not very personal, or I don't know, it takes me always quickly to, it's like a job thing or a professional thing. And so you want to maybe break down this kind of barriers. But I think I also seen like a virtual event from Marc Jacobs for the fragrance launch. I can't remember which kind of platform this was built on, but yeah. I think we're still figuring out a little bit how to do these kind of things, I think
definitely still figuring it out. I've also seen interfaces that are being built that are outside of Zoom to really think outside of the box, where we don't have to necessarily all be in a box and be next to each other. There can be different virtual experiences.
In terms of spend, Alexandra, going back to, and what platforms, I think there's a bigger conversation there though, that is, where are we putting our marketing dollars right now, and I'm really curious to hear, from Sylvia and Michelle on this too, but from my perspective, there's a couple of things that I think we haven't pivoted quickly enough. Some people, believe it or not, are still investing in brick and mortar in significant amounts, and I just don't think we're there yet. And so that's one. But the other huge shift that I think some have adopted, and everyone, is shifting from acquisition to retention, your dollars, or getting those more evenly distributed. I think .com right now is going to be so saturated. I mean, we are all on it and fighting and chasing people around the internet. And, I think we forget that we've got a really big audience, and most brands have, loyal consumers already engaging with us on .com. And so the best advice I think I've gotten and I've given is you've got to go back and look at your LTV and ensure that you are ramping that up in significant ways, because there's so much coming at them now that they could very easily be lost.
Michelle,
Yeah.
Sylvia, anything you want to add?
I think it's a good point. Obviously, you know, you have to probably go high and low with from awareness building to loyalty across the channel. Obviously, for mass brands like Revlon, where you don't have your own D2C and you drive your e-commerce through Amazon or Walmart.com or Target.com. Obviously, you don't own that consumer as you would own it probably with your own D2C. So I think you have to find different ways of still connecting. Obviously, you can have your own. We have our own CRM program while we connect with them, but at the end of it, we don't know if the consumer then goes by to Walmart or Target or So this is like a little bit the breakdown of the challenge we have as a mass brand, where we don't have yet our own D2C, but obviously it's there's been many thoughts and reflections on us saying why not at one point to really go there, even if we have a very bright distribution in brick and mortar as a traditional mass brand. So definitely we are balancing out more the spend between awareness building and really like trying to go back and try to be close to the consumer in the funnel and to try to retain them. But obviously it's more challenging when you don't have your own D2C.
So Sylvia, you Revlon sells on Amazon, correct? Have you thought about partnering with them, like how Fenty? I know we mentioned Fenty earlier. Partners with Amazon for the Fenty show. They have an upcoming production, I think, as well. Have there been any discussions between Revlon and Amazon about new ways to engage the consumer online?
Yeah, I mean, Amazon is doing all these beauty events, right? Where they have influencers demonstrating your product, and we're participating at that event. So yes, it goes beyond just a transaction. So I think there's been a lot of. I mean, even last year we did a collaboration with them on the Mrs. Maisel kit, because it was the biggest show, and so we kind of took it out of the transactional ecosystem and connected more like the larger audience with us. So, but again, this beauty event that Amazon is holding, I think it's interesting because they take a little bit less the transactional hard selling part, but they're known for, obviously, because it's the most convenient platform you can buy beauty from, into something where you get more content, you get more transactions, something also more human. So we are participating at that program, which I think it's a one step already to close that gap a little bit,
Michelle, Kim, any other thoughts on how Amazon can partner with beauty or fashion? Okay, we'll skip that for now. Switching gears here a little bit, I do want to talk about the ways that customers have begun to or continued to communicate with their brand. So it's less of a one-to-one, it's less of a talking at you relationship and more of a dialogue between brand and consumer. And I would love to hear from all of you what you think the biggest the most prominent feedback you're hearing from consumers is. What do they expect from COSIS or from Revlon, and how is that fitting into how you're making decisions about brand communication?
Yeah, I think really, this year customers are especially more so holding brands accountable. In June, we saw one of the biggest movements in our history, and I'm really proud to be part of a brand that was the first to take a stand, to be able to say that we are listening and that we're doing better, both in the short term and the long term. I think inclusivity is much more than shade range. So for us, we're making sure to hold ourselves accountable in that way on every level, from PD to marketing and more. Yeah.
Yeah, obviously the consumer wants transparency, wants authenticity. And I think that, to Michelle's point, there has been obviously a shift on how brands unveil even some of their weaknesses, So, I think that, for example, Revlon, actually, something funny because I think probably nobody knows, but Revlon was the first brand in the 70s to hire an African-American model in beauty. So we were like, it's part of our DNA, but obviously you don't talk about it because you take it for granted, because you think that you have the shades and you try to have the right models, blah, blah. So I think that what is important is that even if you don't have the perfect solution, is that to be transparent about where you are today and what your plans are to maybe evolve. Because I think that it's not because we were the first ones that it's still relevant today how we're doing things in the inclusivity space. Obviously, it's one of our key mantras to be inclusive, diverse, from product, consumer, and also employees, obviously. But I think it's important to just say, listen, guys, this is where we stand today. This is where we are. And this is how we think we can do better, because you can always improve everything you do, even if it's part of your DNA or, so I think that's the big shift is really where we said, wait, let's be transparent. Let's say maybe we're not as great as we thought, or we can definitely do better in terms of maybe having, more influence or whatever it is. I mean, it doesn't really matter what the numbers are, but it's just like to really, have this transparent conversation, a little bit more raw conversation with your audience to say, okay, great, this is what we're doing. So we want to go, this is how we connect, and, and not trying to hide behind perfection, because no one is perfect. I think we're in an evolving world, especially this year with all disruptions. No one was really at the perfection. I think even the brands who we thought were perfect, and when you're looking at the numbers that were unveiled on Pull Up for Change Challenge, you're like, oh, really? I didn't know they were like solo on that. So I just think it's, accountability means being transparent and standing to where we stand, but, saying we can do better. I think this is what I think is more important today,
How frequently should brands be communicating a benchmark and how they're measuring up to that benchmark through a year? Is it an annual report, or is it more frequently? Are those conversations happening daily on social media?
I mean, that example's already been set for us. I mean, I think that, Body Shop a million years ago, and certainly annual report, but you've got brands like Reformation that has their environmental scale available on every single product that they have on their website, or Everlane with their transparency in terms of their pricing. And so I think that it needs to be as transparent as that. The example has been set. And, for this incredible movement to be successful, we have to keep it going. We can't rely on just our consumers to light up, and then move on. We should be leading in this. We should be holding ourselves accountable for this and being transparent about it. And so I think there's a lot of ways that you can do it. And, but I think there's been great examples that have been set for us already.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a constant. I mean, either it's part of our strategy and mantra and philosophy and values, or it's not. And if it's not, then you can be great once a year communicating it. But then if you don't stand to your actions or your beliefs in your day to day, again, it's not always easy to do it. But I think that has to be part of your day to day. The way you approach.
That's so important. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Sylvia, but that piece is so important in this. Is that a campaign is one thing, right? Company values are something different. They're not the fourth or fifth thing on your mission statement. They're embedded in every one of the pieces of your mission statement. And so, you can't be, a Body Shop I'll use as a very old example, but you can't just be against animal testing. You have to campaign to end animal testing in cosmetics. And so, or like what Michelle said, this isn't just a movement, we're incorporating it into our marketing, it needs to be, you look at every piece of your business and say, this is what I stand for, and this is how we are going to live and breathe it in our department. And that to me is where people get tripped up on being values driven. So I completely agree with you, Sylvia. It's got to be, it's not, it's not the fourth leg of the stool. It's embedded in it all, and people need to look at it like that versus a campaign.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Michelle, I want to ask you this question, how you think about brand equity through retail partners or your relationships with your retail partners. So if Kosas is working with Goop or Sephora, you guys are stocked there. At what point, are you holding your retail partners accountable to the same standards and values that you hold the brands internally? And how do you begin to think about how all of that affects brand equity?
With Kosas, we are a clean brand, and we were one of the first clean brands. When Sheena started the brand, she didn't even start to create a clean brand. That's what got her the best efficacy. But with our partners like Goop, like Credo, like Detox, they really do align with our values, and that's been something that's been from the get-go. Sephora, our biggest retailer and who we're exclusive with, that they've been a great partner. And I think also have stepped up in terms of where their values lie. And, you know, so overall, we see them as a partner in this as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I want to encourage the audience as well, as we're approaching this 10 minutes left mark. Please feel free to ask any questions that you might have for our panelists, all of whom are wickedly smart. But from there, I will keep asking questions as we wait for those to come in. I am very curious to hear from all of you what changes have happened in the last 6-12 months that you think will stick permanently, or at least for the near future.
You mean on the consumer side or for us?
Specific as it relates to engaging with the consumer, sure.
I think overall, the importance of showing humanity of your brand and coming from a place of realness and authenticity has been so amplified this year, and likely won't go away anytime soon. Like Kim said, now more than ever, customers need to feel connected to a brand. They see that brand as a person, not just because they love the products, but because it aligns with their values. I also think being fluid with the changing times and being able to provide a sense of escapism through our content and our launches and keep from being too serious is also something that won't change.
Well said.
Yeah.
I would add a couple of just tactical things on that. I mean, I think that's the most important. There's a couple of other tactical things that I think will continue on. Social commerce, I think, is one of them. And I do think that more of a focus on retention versus just acquisition, you know, real solid approach. One of the things that hasn't happened, but I hope happens, is that we launch fewer SKUs. And there are a few brands that I think are doing, Kosas I think is doing that really well, where they're giving SKUs a chance to launch and live and breathe and build a community without sort of crowding around it a lot of other things. And I think that that is a healthier, you know, path for a brand. And again, it's, you know, there's going to be a lot of launches, I think, coming out of this. You know, celebrities and influencers have been sitting at home for 6 months wondering how they're going to, you know, continue on. And so just seems like we're going to have more and more and more. And so I hope that what we see are, that's the case, that we're launching with fewer SKUs and really giving them an opportunity to shine and be the right fit for the brand and for their consumer.
I think that to build on that, Kim, I think that we see also that people want simpler life, but they go back to basics, right? They are probably not doing the 10-step contouring anymore. I mean, this already before the pandemic happened, but I think now even more so, we see that it's either you have no makeup on or you have like a very light makeup on. So the no makeup, which was like a soft trend before, now becomes like your day-to-day reality, you know? So I think that, to your point, is helping consumers also to simplify their life. And it doesn't mean that you don't have to know any makeup anymore, but it's maybe focus on things that are easy for them to do quickly and doesn't look like so overstated, or and forcing them to get that super Instagram look, which nobody cares about anymore. So I think that and I think it's really important to see that, because again, how many people have not put any foundation on for 6 months? You know what I mean? Now, thanks God, there's mask makeup, so you can put eye makeup on. But at the end of the day, it's like, how do we adapt in the communication on that? And yeah, I think that's, I mean, for example, Revlon has a lot of like very old, you know, iconic products. So how do we even go back to those iconic must-have to anchor the brand back on this kind of traditional values of, it's been out there for 30 years, so it's still good, and you know, you can still, you know, build on that. So I think it's really, how do we adapt to what people want to put on their face, you know, and how do we communicate in terms of content on it, and even not make them feel bad about it, you know? So, and then, yeah, and I think obviously the self-care piece is very important. You know, how do you then play on that ground to make people also feel good about their skin themselves? And I think what's funny for us is that we launched the volcanic roller, I don't know, like earlier this year, and then one TikToker picked it up and it became like super viral. We couldn't even keep up with the stock, and we didn't even think about that this little tiny volcanic roller to absorb your sebum could have been like so big on the social channels. But obviously it made sense because it was what self-care. It's very simple. It was demonstrated by a very raw content piece, and I think it's, again, it goes back to these kind of things where the super polished content for aspiration is important, but I think that we need to accept as a brand to be a little bit less polished and more raw, and make people participate more on who the brand is, you know.
We have a question from an anonymous attendee, very mysterious, who asks, many brands claim to empower their consumers. What does empowerment mean to you in this modern age? I think he's looking for specifics, or she.
That's a great question. And I mean, I think empowerment, it's different in many, it can be viewed in different parts of your world and your life, right? So there's one thing of just being within a brand and empowering your team, right? So, you know, as a leader, are you setting a strategy and giving your team, empowering your team to make decisions, have successes, make mistakes, and learn from them, and gain those experiences in order to feel like they are getting fulfilled and, you know, where they're spending 50 or 60 hours of their week. So empowerment can be that, you know, and those to me are the brands that I'm most attracted to. And I also think they're the most successful. But empowerment for the consumer, I think it goes back to transparency. And, you know, we are relying on them too much to hold us accountable versus hold ourselves accountable. And, you know, which we've talked about already, but I think empowering the consumers by giving them real information, consistent information, and allowing them, you know, to use their dollars to shop where they align with the beliefs of the brand.
I think on top of that, I mean, obviously Revlon is the brand of empowerment because we always been in this living boldly kind of mantra, and I think an additional point to Kim is, I think that what we believe is empowering women. I think empowering has been so used now, it becomes like a very banal expression, to be honest. And I think that everybody and their dog says empowerment on anything. But I believe that, you know, as a brand, you know, in today's world, it goes back into inclusivity and diversity, saying anybody, you know, you can give the consumer the tools with your beauty products, but it's up to them to express themselves how they want. And there's no judgment how you look and how you feel about the way you want to be, you know. So I think that it's an additional piece on the more emotional kind of part of empowerment, where I think that the way you show up as a brand in terms of who do you use as model, influencer, do you really stand to the fact that it doesn't matter how you look and how you feel, that you can wear any product and you feel better about yourself and empowered to make decisions and embrace your life how you want. I mean, it sounds very generic and philosophical, but I think that in today's world where there's no constraints, but it's sort of judgment in a way, you know, especially in the Instagram world. I mean, if you don't show up with your perfect, you know, face, you feel like, you know, you kind of unveil weaknesses. And I think that helping the consumer to embrace even what she thinks might have your weaknesses, and to be a little bit more confident about whatever she is, what she wants to do in her life, makes it feel stronger. And I think that I saw this change also when we hired Ashley Graham, you know, as a brand ambassador, which was actually the first plus size model in beauty, you know. And obviously there's no, I mean, it seems normal to us because there's no judgment. But I think when you think about it, how the beauty industry has been shaping those models for many years, I've been even like a couple of years ago before the whole craze of influencers come up. But I think it's important to even as a brand be as open and daring to show people that are not fitting into the norm. You know, and this is, I think, how you empower people the most, because you show them that it's okay, whatever you want to be, who you want to look like, it's okay, and just take it and make it the best out of it, you know. So this is what I believe is part of what we think want women to take from this brand since its inception, actually, you know.
We are coming up on the final minute here, so I want to thank all of our audience members for asking their questions. And if we didn't get to you, I apologize, but I'm going to give one more opportunity here to our panelists to address something that they are excited about for the rest of the year, either that the brand is working on or something that they see in the space that really signals creative shift and creating unique brand moments.
I'm really excited about what's going to happen at brick and mortar. I still very much believe in that in-person experience. I think it's going to change, and whether that means that it's going to be, smaller footprints of stores or more curated assortments. Maybe I think pricing is going to have to come into play. I think the staff or, the people working on the sales floor are going to have to be so much more educated, because we're all coming out of this so much more educated, because all we've done is research products and trends and watch YouTube videos. And so for me, that like, what are we going to be going to stores for, and what is that experience? I am so excited to see where we land on that. And I can't wait to get back in a store and interact with people in person.
Yeah, I think overall the future is hopeful, and that, makeup isn't dead, and that it's, it will come back just like retail, and that brands that are winning are, have pillars of inclusivity, values, and clean baked in their DNA.
Sylvia, anything for you?
No, I think I agree. I think obviously it's very interesting to see how retail will evolve to change the experience of the consumer, while not being just convenient, but also like giving it like an additional reason to go to a store, because today you can get anything you want in today's marks and shops. So I think that to Kim's point, the in-person experience, you cannot take it away, so it's something that really is important, but how is it going to evolve to make people feel safe actually, but still getting this connection? And I think on the brand side, I think, again, this year was a year of acceleration of everything we're starting to do and evolving in terms of value. So I think it's really to continue embracing it and remain very agile. I think what really stood out for us is how quickly you have to adapt to a new reality. No matter how big or small the organization is, you have to just have everyone around one goal and get things done and adjust and trying things out, because honestly, nobody knew how, each time you were doing a post, you're like, oh my God, is it going to be appropriate or inappropriate? So I think that in today's world where everything can become quickly a backlash, it's still standing to your beliefs and not being too reactive on little things, and staying true to who you are and the values, so and even sometimes something uncomfortable, I think it's important to do that, especially in today's world where people want authenticity and maybe accept some weaknesses or some things that are not as polished or great,
Mm-hmm. Well, what a great note to end it on. And I want to thank all of you again for participating in today's event, and all of the audience members. Please enjoy the rest of the Tribe Summit, and I look forward to seeing you all on the internet or in real life one day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys.